Hello, I'm Tony, and welcome to the Tony Shap Show. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back. I have a special guest on the show, Trent. I can't wait for him to introduce himself, and you guys get a chance to learn about who he is. And he's a pretty special guest. I'm super honored to have him on here. So with all that said, Trent, I wanted to personally give you a warm welcome and welcome to the Tony Shap Show.
Far too kind, Tony. Thanks very much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
Of course. Let's fire off with the first question. So, what's the one word you could use to describe how you're opening? One word that how you're feeling right now as you're opening into this conversation. So, what is that one word?
Transparent.
Transparent. I love it. Very good. Excellent. Let's talk about business. So, talk about your business, your why, how you got started, the story, and where you've come to as you are today and where you're planning on going. So the listeners could be right on the same page with us.
Sure. So I actually have three businesses. The one is my podcast, the Bread Ideas podcast. I've been podcasting now for about a decade and pushing 360 or so interviews. And that business has led me into other businesses. So you'll see the Inc. 5000 pictures on the wall behind me. Another one of my companies is an Amazon reseller where we form direct relationships with existing brands to become an authorized and ideally exclusive reseller for their products on the Amazon sales channel. That business grew really, really quickly because we focused very heavily on our business processes, and in particular, creating documented business processes, or standard operating procedures, as some folks like to call them. And that led to the third business. Back in 2017, I was invited to speak at a conference about the success of my Amazon reseller business. I did not have a software company called Flowster at the time. And I said to everyone in the audience who had probably seen me on YouTube or heard my podcast or what have you, I said, listen, I've got nothing for sale. I'm just going to explain to you what we did, how we delegated everything or documented everything and then delegated everything. And that's what led to the growth. And much to my surprise and delight, at the end of it, there was a large number of people. There was 600 people in the audience, and a bunch of them wanted to buy copies of our standard operating procedures. And we've now sold millions of dollars worth of that. And the software company Flowster was created. And so now it has come, it's taken over and it's become my number one focus, simply because the opportunity is so significant. I've always wanted to have a software company because the economic model and the business model is so incredibly compelling. And of course, the valuations, I build all my businesses to sell, and you can't beat SaaS company valuations when it comes to, getting a big check at the end of whatever journey it is that you're on, so that you can do whatever the next thing is that you would like to do.
Wonderful. Thanks for giving us the high level overview. But I'm curious to know I should know this, but I don't know this. What's your ranking on Inc. 5000 that you received?
It was number 254 in 2019 and number 622 in 2020.
Congratulations. That's awesome. By no surprise. And for those of you listening to this or you're watching this on YouTube, just to share with you my story about Trent. I think he was the very first podcast that I ever listened to. This is back almost a decade ago. And I'll never forget, I was at the gym. I was on this big mission with my, body, restoring the integrity back in my body, dropping down from 24% to 8% body fat. And I was having this workout, and I'll never forget, I was stepping on a treadmill and I started listening to one of your episodes, and it just made my workout go through so easily. So I'm super honored to have you on here. You're a legend, man. So that's awesome.
That's awesome. I'm glad to hear it.
Of course, man. Let's talk about some recent wins. I know you talked about the Inc. 500, but if you could share with us a recent win that you had, Trent, that's dear and near to your heart, business context, and also what you learned from it, that would be wonderful.
Well, obviously getting on the Inc. 5000 was pretty darn exciting, and to get on 2 years in a row and be in the top 1,000 both times was pretty nice. And I think what many people might not realize at first glance is I don't even work in that company. I started it and I was supremely focused on it for the first year. But unlike, I think, the decisions that maybe a lot of CEOs take, is I decided that from the get-go, I didn't want the company to be dependent upon me for day-to-day operations. I wanted to spend my time working on the business, not in the business. And, ever since reading The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, that's always been the way I've thought about businesses. As the CEO, I'm trying to work on them and not in them. And so that happened, and it's continued to be successful without me doing anything. And that only can happen when you, first of all, make a decision that that's how you want to run your company. And number two is you put the time and effort into creating the processes and the procedures and putting the right people in place so that the people combined with those processes and procedures can achieve the intended outcome. I'm especially proud of that, and as proud of everyone on my team who's helped us to achieve those incredible results.
That's wonderful. Let's talk about the opposite side of that, unfortunately. So, what is a recent not so win? It's a nicer way of saying failure or mistake or something like that. So, what's a recent thing that was not it was not like a win, and what did you learn from it, Trent?
So I call those a tuition or a dumb tax because they always cost money. In this case, it cost me somewhere in the order of 50 grand, and it was a bad hire. I hired a new VP level person to be in charge of marketing for my software company. And this individual was quite bright, no question. But the reason it didn't work out was something I didn't anticipate, and that was the cultural fit. This particular individual was really focused on doing a lot of planning before any execution. And as a startup, we're the exact opposite of that. We're a lot of execution with not so much planning. And then we take these experiments that we run, and many of them fail, but the ones that succeed, then we turn those into processes and procedures, and then we repeat them on an ongoing basis. And I'd never hired someone at that cost before. I'd never spent that much money on attorneys drafting up employment agreements and shareholder agreements because they were going to have options to get equity and all sorts of things. And within less than 3 months, we had to sever that relationship. And so there was a lot of things that were done that didn't need to be done yet. There was a lot of just wasted time and obviously a lot of wasted money. And so, but the good news is I'll never make that mistake ever again. I'll be very cognizant in the interview process to make sure that there's that cultural alignment, in addition to, does this person have the skills and the intelligence and the experience necessary to be able to do this role?
100%. That's beautiful, and thanks for sharing that with us. That's an expensive tuition. It's just like you could call it a year or a semester depending on the school. But looking back, Trent, I want to kind of open up something for that listener right now. That there could be another founder or someone that's just made that hire, and they're like, oh no, or they're thinking I could be going down this road with this new hire. So my question would be, was there like one sign that you saw early on that said, oh no?
Yeah, both myself and the co-founder, and we're very good friends. We've been friends for a long time. We know each other really well. And aside from my wife, there's probably no one in the world I trust more. He and I both confessed in Slack one day that we didn't really like talking to this person, because what a conversation that we might use, 2 sentences to get through, this person would use 27 paragraphs. And it got to the point where we would each dread receiving a Slack message because we knew that now 45 minutes of our day was going to be taken from us.
Wow.
Because this particular individual had a communication style that quite honestly didn't work for us. And so we noticed that. I didn't say anything for the longest time, and he didn't say anything because obviously I didn't want to drill holes in my own boat. I didn't want to sabotage a new hire. But it got to the point where we no longer could not say anything. And when we both did finally say something, he said, oh my gosh, you're feeling that too? And I said, yeah, man, I'm suffering here. And so very shortly thereafter, we made the decision that we were going to tell this individual that none of us liked communicating with this person, for the reasons why and what the cultural fit was. And then this was just the week before Christmas, and we didn't want to be those guys that fired somebody the week before Christmas. So we didn't actually drop the axe on that call, but the week afterwards it was done.
I see. Thank you for sharing that with us. That's a huge gem, for all these people that are listening to this. There's VCs I interview, and also VC-backed companies that I interview. So they just get this fluctuation of cash. Well, here's 8 million. What are you going to do now? Now they're rushed to hire people, trying to fill those seats. But that lesson right there, that's huge. I'm definitely going to slice that up and repurpose it so we can share it with the audience as well, because that's a huge mistake that any entrepreneur can appreciate. And if they could avoid that, it's huge for them. So
yeah, I was going to say, and avoiding it in hindsight, actually, Tony, wouldn't have been that difficult. I think what I would do differently the next time round is I would come up with a small project. And as a part of the interview, I would literally pay them, $1,500 or $2,000 or $3,000, whatever it is appropriate to do this project, so that we could see firsthand what it was going to be like working with them on an ongoing basis.
That's really smart. Just like when you hire a VA, right? You give them a couple of tasks. It's like, I want to try you out, but I'll paid test drive, so to speak. Wonderful. Let's shift gears a little bit into the exciting side of revenue. So from your experience, Trent, what do you think, what does it take for a SaaS company to go from 0 to $500,000 MRR? And what mindset is that for that leader? And also, what type of mindset is it for someone to go 500,000 MRR to $1 million plus?
So we're not at $500,000 in MRR yet. So I'm going to speak from personal experience, and then also just from some theory, because I've interviewed many SaaS founders on my show. If I was to pick 2 words to describe the journey from 0 to $500,000, it's growth hacking. It's just running as many low-cost experiments as you can to try and get rapid results to see what works. You've really got to understand product market fit. You've really got to understand who your target customer is and the specific challenges they have. And more importantly, the specific words they use to describe those challenges, because none of your marketing is going to land unless you're using the same vernacular that they are. So in the from journey from 0 to $500,000, I think the CEO having a personal brand is important. For us, it was thousands of users signed up for our software just because they knew of me and my podcast and my YouTube channel. And then beyond that, you've just got to figure out, how can I get as many conversations as possible for the lowest amount of expenditure as possible, as fast as possible with my target audience, so that I can make sure that we are as close as we could reasonably get to the very best product market fit possible. And then as well, making sure that your onboarding is as effective as possible. And in the beginning, that superior customer service is going to literally just come from manually onboarding customers. And then over time, as you've done that enough and you've recorded all those calls, you're going to see themes that emerge. You're going to see trends that emerge and so forth. And then perhaps you can make your software interface more effective at self-guiding, so that your churn is as low as possible. And then the journey from the other side is much more about strategy and much more about taking more time to plan and so forth. And that's when I'll be going back to the well and looking for another VP of marketing. But for us, that was premature.
Understood. Wonderful. Let's talk a little bit more about your current company, the one that you made Inc. 5000 with. Can you share with the audience, what's the typical fit of a client that you like or that you make the biggest difference to? So that way the listeners listening to this, they go, okay, this is a good fit for me, or it's not a good fit for me, or at least let's go check out Trent's company. So go ahead and share with us.
Yeah, so that wouldn't be actually the best company as an example, because we don't have customers per se. We have partners, and they're the brands that manufacture whatever is sold on Amazon. What I'd say, Tony, is a better answer to your question is for the company that's my focus, which is Flowster, the software company. And that company serves 2 masters or 2 markets. Number one is people who would like to have an Amazon reseller business like I have, that is now a passive source of income for me, puts 5,000 plaques on the wall, puts money in my bank account, but I don't work there. We have a product called the Wholesale E-commerce Business System, which is just a collection of standard operating procedures that we've developed. And for folks that are interested in doing something like that Flowster is the platform where they can get access to those. You can learn more about it at brightideas.co/webs. And then the other newer customer segment that Flowster is very focused on, which is actually similar to my other company that won those, is the brands themselves. Anyone who's been around the Amazon space for a while knows that a lot of brands don't want more sellers. It's harder now to establish those relationships with brands and be their reseller. Brands want more control, which means they want their own Amazon Seller Central account. They want to do it themselves. But what they lack is the expertise or the procedures to be able to do that. So they're either going to figure it out from trial and error, which eventually maybe they'll get it done, but it might not be the most efficient, and there could be some good tuitions along the way. Or maybe they're going to hire it out to a marketing agency of some kind, in which case could be expensive. Or they might want to tap into our Amazon Seller Playbook again, which is a huge library of these procedures and processes that would make running your own Amazon Seller Central account actually pretty easy to do if you can follow a checklist and read instructions. It's not going to be difficult at all to do. And people can learn more about that at Flowster.app/ASP, or they can just go to the homepage and click on the nav bar. They'll find it there as well. But Flowster it's a really cool thing because there's not a business on the planet that isn't dependent upon highly repetitious processes. Prospecting is a process, marketing is a process, customer onboarding is a process, customer service is a process. There's so many things in your business that it's the same thing over and over and over again. And I think for a lot of businesses, and I don't know your audience well, so forgive me, but a lot of folks in what I call mainstream businesses, they have no idea that, about this concept called a virtual assistant, where you can employ somebody in the Philippines who speaks perfect English, who has just as much education as an American does, but they'll work for $4 an hour with no healthcare. And they can be very, very competent, and they can do a lot of things for you if you have the procedures in place. And it doesn't matter what business you're in. You could come and use Flowster, and you could create your own processes or visit our process marketplace where we have a whole bunch of pre-made ones. And you could start leveraging that offshore talent to increase your productivity while simultaneously driving your costs down. And I've yet to meet a CEO that doesn't want to do either one of those two things.
You're 100% right. Yeah. And as we're coming to an end here, share with us, what's that one question that you wish people would ask you? I know you've interviewed hundreds of people, if not thousands, and you've been interviewed hundreds of times, there's thousands. What's that one question that you wish people would ask you, Trent, that no one ever asks? Like, what is that one question?
That is a very tough one. I don't know how good of an answer I'm going to give you to that, because I've been interviewed so many times now and people ask so many different questions. I would say if someone was to ask me for my advice, they're an aspiring entrepreneur, and I have a YouTube video. It's one of the very first ones that I ever produced. It's got 4 million views now and change. And it's this: what's the best way to succeed in business, Trent? That's the question. What's the best way to succeed in business? And this is particularly important for folks who are on the sidelines and they're not yet in business. And the answer is, the best way to succeed in business is to be in business. And I remember when somebody gave me that advice years ago, I was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, why? That does not help me at all. But there's a huge lesson wrapped up in that piece of advice. And this is why that YouTube video is so popular. And that is this: until you decide to take the plunge and get into business, whatever it is, let's just use an example. I want to be in business. So I'm going to start a lawn mowing company. I'm going to mow people's lawns. At least now I'm in business. That might not be the very best business opportunity in the world. But if you're a smart entrepreneur, being in business, trying to become the most efficient, fastest growing, scalable lawn mowing company there ever was, will help you to uncover an idea that you would have never uncovered. Maybe you're going to make software for lawnmower companies. Maybe you're going to create a new online billing system for laws, or maybe you're going to create a marketing training course for other lawnmower companies. My point is, until you get into the trenches, roll up your sleeves and dig, you won't find any diamonds. You got to dig to find diamonds. And the way to dig is to be in business. New entrepreneurs, they want to sit there. They want the perfect idea. Zero risk of failure, zero risk of anything going wrong, with unlimited potential. Well, good luck to you, because that idea is never going to fall out of the sky into your lap, ever.
It doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist. But there is incredible opportunity. Look at my journey. I started off, podcasting, which led me into the Amazon space, which put me on a stage, which led me into the software space. And now I have more of an opportunity in front of me than I've ever had in my entire life. Never for a moment could I have sat down and thought, I think I'll make software for Amazon sellers so they can be more efficient with their Amazon Seller Central accounts. Like, that idea is never coming.
Very cool, Trent. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. We got some valuable gems and some valuable lessons in business, and also what you've gone through with your journey and what you've uncovered and who you help and all that good stuff. So we appreciate that. And I know it really resonated with me as well. And I can't wait to have you back on this show sometime soon to check in with your new developments and progress as you're making with your company. So with all that said, sadly, let's go ahead and wrap it up with the one-word close as we're signing off. So what's the one word you could use to sign off with us, Trent?
Delegate.
All right. There you have it, folks. Trent, thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure to be here, Tony. Thank you very much for having me on. Thank you to everyone who listened all the way to the end as well.
Thank you. And there you go. I hope you enjoyed it, and great to have you, and thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for the next episode. Till next time, onwards and upwards.